just like walking through it. I was like, how did you do that?
I know. Oh god.
Sticks
I'm
out.
gonna watch some more YouTube. So I'm gonna figure it out.
I love it. It's great. Once you figure it out, it's really, really helpful. Really a great tool.
Yeah.
Excited for you. Hi, Solita.
Hey Zodan.
Hello, how is everyone?
Apologies, I just made you a co-host, Hadassah. Well, it's good to see you, Soledad.
Thank you. I'm just getting home. We did an impromptu trip to Las Vegas for 3 days, which I never do. So it has been hectic, but we're settling.
Nice.
Use me while I eat chili. 5-minute dinner.
You do you got time.
I thought you were eating cereal, so that's better.
I like me a good bowl of cereal too, though.
That's at night. Do you eat cereal at night?
Of course, I'm a millennial. What? Give me some Lucky Charms.
Yeah, my husband does that too. I'm like, I wish I could do that.
Well, yeah, there is a time limit if I plan on sleeping. You know?
No, for me, I'm not a runner, Daniel. I don't run marathons like you do. For me, it just stays with me.
I'd say I run for the benefits of exercise, but really it's just to eat whatever I want, you know?
I appreciate that. So for awareness purposes, Corey cannot join us tonight. She's had some tickets to a show with a kiddo. So she won't be joining us. So I'm helping run the meeting, but she will take notes. She'll review the meeting and take notes. And welcome, AB. It's good to see you.
Your rubber tree. I'm so jealous. It's gorgeous. Oh, wow.
I got it when Rally Sport closed. They were selling so many things, including this tree. I'm learning how to take care of it.
Is it hard? Like, does it take special stuff?
I have no idea. It's been a month. It's still alive. We'll see.
You're rocking it, AB. Awesome. So we did hear from Madeline originally that she wasn't going to be able to make it. Then she said she might be trying to move some things around. I believe Sam will not be joining us this evening. Lizzie is not obligated yet to be here due to the fact that she just got on the panel yesterday. AB, thank you for making the time last minute. I think we're getting pretty close.
And welcome, AB. We're so excited to have you here. Thank you.
Jason's also unable to make it, and Milen just popped in. I think you're pretty well set.
You want to kick us off, Dasa?
Can do. I apologize in advance for any cat yelling you hear in the background. He's being very sassy right now, but just welcome everybody. Thank you for coming to our Boulder Police Oversight Panel meeting for June 2023. Recording. I would like to start with the reading of our land acknowledgement, which is we acknowledge the Arapaho, Ute, and Cheyenne tribes, the tribal custodians of the land on which the Police Oversight Panel and Boulder Police Department operate, and pay our respects to their elders past and present. We'd also like to welcome the public and any potential press that is in our meeting. Welcome all panelists, and specifically AB. Thank you so much for joining us on your first meeting as a panelist. We're excited to see you here, and because it was last minute, in case for those who are not aware, new panelists or the alternates drew numbers yesterday, and so we got notice of who our new panelists would be yesterday. And so because it was such a quick turnaround, we're very fortunate that Amy's able to be here with us tonight. But Lizzie will be able to join us in the July meeting. If there are any questions by the public, we ask the public uses the Q&A during the meeting. Do we have a panelist that would be able to answer or address the Q&A? Somebody that's willing to kind of field those questions.
I think Corey usually does that, but Amy, I can go ahead and do that this evening if that would be helpful.
I'm happy to do that. My question out of curiosity is how is that different from public comment?
Yeah, so for the Q&A, if any small questions about meeting process or anything, those can go in the Q&A. Big questions related to policy, panel business, we do refer those to public comment. Yeah.
Copy. I'm happy to monitor. Yeah, no worries.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay. And then if there are any complaints from members of the public who are here, we do have a web address at the bouldercolorado.gov /services/police oversight. And that is where you can submit online complaints. And then there's also a link to our panel email, which is policeoversight.panel@bouldercolorado.gov. All right, so we'll jump into our agenda here. The first item is approval of our May 10th meeting minutes. Any questions or comments regarding the minutes before we vote to approve?
I move to approve the minutes for May.
Wonderful. I will second that.
A second.
Perfect. Thank you, Victor. All right, so we will vote to approve. All those that say yay, please raise your hands or use the little digital hand. Wonderful. Looks unanimous. Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Minutes are approved. All right, next item on the meeting tonight is the quarterly BPOP meetings that we have with Chief Maris Harold. Our next meeting was scheduled for June 28th. However, due to the current moratorium in terms of anything that is not specific to ordinance work, the BPD did postpone that. We did cancel this specific one, but because we have other ones on the calendar, obviously we still have that other one on the calendar. I think that it was mentioned that communications committee was maybe trying to work something out on that. Does anybody want to say on that now, or we'll have a moment for committees later if you want to follow up with that later as well. Soledad, I see you.
Yes, hello. I just wanted to point out that today is June 14th, 2023. And I think you said June 23rd. So for the purposes of recording and people watching this later, today is 14, right? June 14th.
Yes, perfect. Yes, actually, I actually omitted the date. So thank you, Soledad, for clarifying.
On the meeting with chief of police, I can actually talk to that because I think I was in the crosswires before we got the request from the city side to cancel that meeting. I had reached out to Victor and Soledad as chairs of the communications committee to hand off that meeting since I had been doing those in the interim. And then we got the request. So I think there was just some miscommunications there, but I do want to reiterate, Victor, Soledad, if you wanted to follow up with Amy and Farah about if we wanted to pursue a meeting with Chief Harold to focus on the ordinance work. And that was, I know, what we had talked about in that email too. So I just wanted to put some wires together.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if they wanted to talk about it or if we wanted to at least at some point, hey, this is the draft, this is what we're talking about. So yeah, I think at some point we would definitely want to revisit that, especially if it's on the table still.
Awesome. And so do we need any guidance in terms of next steps on that, or do we know who like if we did want to pursue a meeting with the chief for specifically ordinance discussion, we'll handle that at the next committee comms meeting?
When is our next scheduled meeting?
Let's see. So our next monthly, sorry, we'll pull up the calendar here.
The next meeting with the chief, I meant.
Well, the next meeting with the chief. Yeah, let me pull up that one too. Sorry, I have two screens and my mouse is fighting me on which screen to be on. It would be, I believe it would be September or August. Okay, meeting.
Okay, we'll add that to our list.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you, Victor. Yeah, actually, I don't see anything on the calendar yet, but if it was quarterly, then I would expect, August or September, basically, for our next meeting.
Hadassah, can I just add something? Particularly since it's on the ordinance, my preference would be that it go through the work group. I mean, the police department has a representative on the work group. Soledad is on the work group. And so when we do have a working draft, I mean, there's going to be a lot of people, including the police department, that are going to be getting copies and working through it. And so, I do need to be organized in terms of collecting all the feedback. And so it would be easier if it kind of goes through the process that I set up. And so like, once we have a working draft, there's going to be a lot of opportunities to get feedback. And I'm pretty confident they're going to want to weigh in addition to the union representatives and all the, associated organizations throughout, Boulder. So it would just be easier if we can kind of just let the work group do its work and go through the process. But the way that hopefully my optimistic timeline is going is that the feedback will happen hopefully way before September. So I don't think you'll have to, by far wait for that meeting in any stretch of the imagination.
Thank you, Farah. So my second question, does the chief want to meet with us if we're in a moratorium? And it seemed, that was unclear, so.
If it's not in regard to ordinance work, I think we abide by our resolution that the work we're continuing is related only to the ordinance. and noting that's up for discussion with city council, I believe tomorrow night. So, yeah.
Really quick, so in answer to your question, Victor, about the date schedule, the next future date, there is a list of all of the dates in your SharePoint site under, and it's a 2023 POP meeting schedule. And it has it slated for September 27th, but to Daniel's point, if it's not ordinance or related, depending on what happens, then that wouldn't happen. Does not appear that it's on calendars at this point. At least not our calendars.
Perfect, thank you both. Any other thoughts or comments? Welcome, Madeline. It's nice looking there. All right, okay, perfect. Then we will move to the next item on our agenda, which is a status report on the hiring of a new monitor. And I believe that would be you, Amy.
That is me. Thank you so much. So we were fortunate that we received, I believe it was 53 applications. The recruiter narrowed it down to a smaller batch, and we're meeting with the recruiter tomorrow to determine who we want to move forward for virtual interviews, which are scheduled for next week or the week after. And then good news, July 11th, the evening of July 11th, hoping you all have that on your calendars. We are going to be hosting the community event again. We're going to open it up to more participants at this point, since health requirements are better than they were this winter when we were hosting that evening event. So we'll be having a press release coming out for that, and an invitation for you all to attend that, as sending that out to far and wide as much as we can to get people to participate in that, to meet the candidates, and be able to, same as we did last time, people can submit questions in advance so we can ask the panelists their questions. And then we are also going to be then hosting the panel interviews, so the typical round robin where they go around and meet with different panels for an interview process. They will be doing that on the 12th. And hopefully after that, we'll get ourselves a monitor. So more to come. But it's looking up.
I have a question. Who from the panel is going to be involved in that interview process?
Sure. So at this point, Nuria has requested the co-chair's participation in those interviews during that, the 12th.
Okay, any other questions for Amy? Thank you. So we will move to our next, actually, I will hand it off to Daniel for the rest of our agenda.
Thanks, Sadasa. So next up, we're gonna have our consultant update from Farah on police oversight panel ordinance work.
Thanks, Danielle. Well, I'm really excited to report, because I feel like it's taken us a while to get here, that we did have our first work group meeting last night. And just to kind of reiterate, because I know there's been a lot of emails, but they're mostly about the community event. But in terms of the work group, we have Hadassah on it, Soledad. We have Aaron Poe, city attorney, Alistair McNear. No, is that his last name? McAllister?
McNiven.
I really just demolished that. Sorry, Alistair. On it, and we're working on, Madeline made a recommendation from the NAACP representative that we're hoping, we think she's out of town. So we've been contacting her, waiting for her, hopefully come back in town this week to join the work group. And basically yesterday's meeting was about introductions, and it's really important that we are on the same page about expectations and the purpose of the work group, and then working through how we're going to work together. So I felt like it was a really fruitful conversation in terms of being on the same page about the work group and understanding that, it's kind of one part of the recommendations that will go to council, and obviously council will be the final decision maker. And then obviously there will be other groups that will weigh in. One of the topics that came in was communication. I can't remember who asked, but I'm like, the panel is not going to let me get away with not communicating with them on the ordinance. So I told them that I was planning on a bi-weekly cadence for the panel. And then I have a group of stakeholders that I've met with and I've talked to through this process. I have them on a completely different email chain that I sent updates to, and I think I'm going to update them monthly. And so that's really the plan that we talked about yesterday. And we have set the scheduled calendar invites. We're meeting every Tuesday pretty much throughout the summer. And I think we're going to be able to move pretty quickly. We're handling it by topics and then working through some language. So I feel pretty optimistic that it'll be a fruitful process. I don't know if, so Hadassah, if you want to add anything just from your perspective as a panelist with our first meeting.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, we did also have Martha Wilson, who was our previous panelist on there as well.
Thank you. I forgot Martha. Mhm.
Yeah. And then, I think that we were all sort of on the same page in terms of like, we want to establish something that obviously all parties are comfortable with moving forward, and something that ultimately will help us get back to what we're here for. So I think I felt like it went really well. I felt like it was a good first start. And so we'll be having those every Tuesday in the afternoons or whatever. And so if there is any questions or anything that does come up for anyone, feel free to send those to either the general panel or to us, and we can make sure that those concerns get brought up, aside from all the other venues that we will have. So I think that's it. Victor, I think I see a hand. Yes.
The NAACP representative, who is that person?
She recommended, her name is Velveeta Howell. And so Madeline did an email introduction maybe last week, and I followed up. And then Madeline called me to make sure that we connected. And that's when we talked about, we think that she's out of town. So we just are going to follow up with her. I plan on following up with her tomorrow. I know Madeline's been contacting her as well. So
yes,
hoping we can make that contact, and she'll be open to joining the work group. Velveeta Howell.
yes. And this, so I will follow up after this meeting. I received a couple of phone calls today from people concerned that there was a meeting that took place last night and we were not represented. I said that I thought, from what I remembered, that it was going to be more of what you just said, introductions and just kind of, we didn't get into any great detail. This was like the first meeting. And I didn't think that, I know we want to be present at all meetings, I understand that. But from what you and I spoke about, Farah, there was not going to be any in-depth conversation and delving into issues and details. So I hope I calmed the concern. I'll find out, because I'm going to call back after this meeting. I've just not had a chance. Juneteenth has me a little stretched right now, so I'll get to it after this meeting, just to make sure that I answered, that I satisfied the answers I gave, satisfied. And now hearing a report basically from what actually did take place, that confirms what I said.
It absolutely does. And then also, if the we is the NAACP, Martha is a member. So there, hopefully, I don't know if that's what you meant by we, but.
No, because the representative that is there will be, independent of what Martha's role is, from what I understand. And so, yeah, it's all good. I just wanted want to make sure that, and then the other question that came up was there a representative there from, what is the other group that stood with us at council?
Yeah, so do you want me to speak to that, Hadassah, Daniel, Amy, or do you want to speak to it? I just want to be respectful of the role of this meeting.
Yeah, so I can answer that. So they actually responded that they would not be able to participate in this process. So we don't.
Now, what's the name of the group? I'm sorry, I'm having a moment.
Central Amistad.
Thank you. Yeah, okay. So they are not going to be participating at all?
Correct. They elected not to.
Okay, that's all right.
Yeah, so I mean, we really haven't had a chance to talk about it until now. But this is a good time also, I guess, if there is any, other groups of the community that wanted to, let us know that they want to be involved or take that space. I think we might be. Sarah, do we have any?
And maybe we want to raise up actually to the, so next week, June 21st, is our first opportunity for feedback by the community on the ordinance. And so that's June 21st, 5 to 6:45 at the Canyon Theater in the Boulder Public Library. You can visit us at our website. You can learn more info, but that's one of the opportunities that the working group, and thank you, Communications Committee, Soledad, Victor, Milan, for putting that opportunity together. And so, kind of reiterating what Farah has said is that, the working group is this core group of folks who is facilitating the process. But the process also takes the rest of us showing up to these engagement opportunities to get our feedback in. And really that feedback session next week, we're handing the microphone over to the community. We're sharing the ordinance in advance. So, you can be as specific or general in your feedback as you'd like, but it really is just a really raw listening session. And I think just to double check, Soledad, we did confirm we'll have a Spanish translator there, correct? 2 Spanish translators. I'm assuming that's what you meant. Fair. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so and we will also have Spanish translators there as well as we the ordinance has been translated into Spanish. Thank you, Milan, for heading up that initiative. And so and these opportunities are going to come, and I really encourage the rest of the panel to Victor sent it out, so I'm just going to raise Victor's voice up for us all to get out there and really be sharing this with our community, because this is the opportunity to get engaged and make real impact on this work. Sorry, that was really long. Come to the event next week. Yeah, Victor, I see it on you. Yeah.
Is there a way that I can share my screen just so we could show the flyer, during this event? There's a poll that Mylene created and not everyone responded to. And so if everyone would respond to that poll, that would really help us determine who we could market this event out to. Also want to thank Mylene for creating this flyer in substitution of what the city had handed us. Our last event, we've had 2 events, 1 event in 2 years, and 12 people showed up. This event is going to be, again, targeted to the Spanish-speaking community. Soledad, you mentioned some contacts with the county commissioner and other folks. We have flyers that we could literally hand put up in places. So if you want to do some of this on your own, they're in the tape building in the lobby. I understand you can just pick up a stack and go put them up somewhere. We also have the resources. Thank you, Farah, of letting us know about there's an intern that can literally post these up in different places. So if you know some locations or spots, or if you just want to do it yourself, because if you're putting up a flyer, you don't want to get caught in a conversation about police oversight or not, right? You just want to put it up and go to the next spot and say, hey, come to the meeting, right? But also the meeting is only going to be about the ordinance. So any messaging about the meeting is we're not here to talk about other things and other politics. We're specifically here to talk about the ordinance. and hopefully enough people will show up so we can get their feedback. That's why we kind of moved away from the lecture as more of just a way to just, get that community feedback. So hopefully there's also been a press release. We've used the city resources, but we still need like a full court press to get this information out. So individually, the panel members, put it on your social media, use your folks. Also, this meeting is not going to be online, so it's in person only. So I just want to mention that as well.
Victor, I
Amy?
made you a co-host. If you want to share your screen, you should be able to. If you can't, I'm happy to.
Okay, one sec.
Amy, if you want to make me a co-host, I have it pulled up, ready to go too, if that's helpful.
Everybody's a co-host.
So
You get to
again,
be a co-host. You get to be a co-host. Victor, do you mind if I also add that people can also provide input? That one isn't the one that has a QR code, but there is a QR code on here that people can, for the Spanish version of the ordinance. I just saw that, but the city's also posting it on the Be Heard Boulder site. There you go. So if people aren't able to attend in person, we really want people to attend in person, but people can also, over the next several weeks, be able to provide information at the Be Heard Boulder online site.
And I also had a conversation with a person on city council, and I asked them to share this during the meeting tomorrow. So we're going to get whatever publicity comes from that as well, hopefully.
That's awesome, Victor. Yeah. Hey, I was going to ask Victor or Farah, is there a, for the beheardboulder.org link, is there a time frame for when that will close that we should promote with that?
I believe it's going to be open for 2 weeks. So it went live today. So that would be to the end of the month. So I believe till the 28th, if I remember correctly.
Thank you. Thank you. And stop sharing for now then, but that's on the record. So that'll be on the recorded meeting video that'll go out on our website. Any other final thoughts, comments, questions about the ordinance working group?
No, I don't have anything more to add.
Would you review the details of this meeting next week again, please? The one that's going to be in person only.
Yeah, so the community event, that'll be, oops, sorry, I just closed the window. So that's January. Ooh, it's been a minute, y'all. June 21st, so that's Wednesday, June 21st, 5 to 6:45 p.m. at the Canyon Theater. So that's inside the Boulder Public Library, the one on Arapahoe, the main branch library. That event is all in person. There will be 2 Spanish translators. And for folks who cannot make that event, they can go to beheardboulder.org to also give their feedback on the ordinance online. That website will be open for 2 weeks for feedback.
Okay. Are you aware that there is a major event scheduled approximately at the same time on the 21st? It's called Proclaiming Colorado's Black History Through Music. And the show, the check times, sound check time is at 5:30, and program starts at 7 p.m. I'm just wondering if you were aware of that, if we're aware of that kind of a conflict. I don't know if anything we can do about it at this point, but just FYI.
Thank you. And I don't know, Farah,
Yeah, it definitely presents and I'm glad we're talking about it because it presents I am working with that group in terms of presenting some of the performers who happen to be children. And so it's probably going to create a conflict for me.
Oh, don't worry, I'll be there. Adasa will be there. I think
Okay.
Farrah will be there too.
Okay,
So,
all right. Just so
got
you know,
covered. Yeah,
okay.
so that will be there.
And Soledad, I saw your hand. Did you have something?
Just a couple of thoughts. So one is, I think I would love to see, and I don't know how this can be done, but I do want to mention it. It's hurtful to have missed the Hispanic voices in the group. I'm very concerned, but I also understand absolutely the challenges of participating in this process. But I think we should be at least try more intentionally to capture more of the Hispanic voices. We know at least there's 17% of people living in Boulder. We should have them at the table. So I think maybe a more intentional, more active approach at finding, someone. I have shared with some of you what I think the challenges are to be in these groups as immigrants or having mixed status families, and acknowledging those challenges I think is very important, specifically for this group, in terms of understanding how stressful that can be for someone to be in this group and exposed to the feedback that sometimes is challenging to take. So I would love for us to explore a bit more. I don't know, maybe through other organizations, but I mean, Amistad is the one in the city of Boulder. So maybe if we can come up with an idea of who can we reach out to, even though I not represent, but I'm member of that community, and that can be taken as me representing that voice, and also Hadassah. We are doing this work. I think we need more people,
I agree.
So is Martha as well.
Hmm?
So I said at this point, both of the panelists, which is you and myself, are from the Latina community, and Martha is as well. And so
Okay.
in terms of the working group, we make up the majority.
Yeah, but I think it's important to acknowledge that losing Amistad in this process is a huge loss for us as a community.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
just naming that, I think, is important, and honoring how brave they were in addressing city council and talking about what they did. So just wanted to name that.
Yeah, and I think Soledad, to raise that up a little bit too, is that so last year when we were working on the selection committee was was really important outreach to our nonprofits in Boulder and making those connections. And I think the lesson learned from that is how dependent that is on us as individuals to do that outreach in advance of need. That was the kind of thing we ran up to, is that we popped up and we said, hey, we'd like you to serve on this, and that was kind of out of the blue, is that we have to make those connections as we go. And I'm grateful for El Centro Amistad for serving on the selection committee, for seeing that process through. But to your point, I think what's most important is the accessibility question as well, is making sure that this work remains accessible to the folks we're asking to step in and to do it, and to be asking that question about the work when people say, when people pass on the opportunity to work with us, for us to say, well, what do we need to fix here? Why did you pass? What can we change? How can we make this more accessible for you? And to recognize, that this is a first for the city of Boulder, for us to be so on the front edge of raising up marginalized voices. And so we can lead that work with the questions of accessibility, and exactly what you're doing, Soledad, which is to raise the question and to press the issue. And I encourage all of us to continue making those community connections, so that we have a strong base of support that we can go to in these situations to say, hey, we have a working group, or hey, we have a committee that needs support on an issue. Is there someone who can help us? So I really appreciate you, Soledad, and for raising that. And I think we had, sorry, order, Farah, your hand first, and then Milan.
Yeah, the only thing that I was going to add is that I do think it's also a lesson learned to the panel in terms of just, I don't know if you should necessarily limit yourself to organizations too. I think kind of really broadening it, because with that vote, you really did limit yourself. So I think that that's also just a lesson from experience. But I also want, I mean, this is community work, right? And the working group is not necessarily a bubble. And so I feel like there is still space for Central Amistad in a way that's comfortable with them. And what I'm suggesting, and I think they would take me up on this because I've already met with them once, is that as we get further down in the process, I could just meet with them directly to get their input, because that to me hopefully will alleviate some of the concerns that were brought to me about their participation. And so they can still have a seat at the table. It's just through a different mechanism. And so I can commit to doing that. I mean, I'm doing that for a lot of other organizations. I don't know why I would not do that for Central Amistad. And so that we can ensure that at least their voice is heard in this process. And so I'm happy to do that. And I think they would welcome that opportunity to meet with me one-on-one once we have like something more substantive to go back and forth on, to sit down and have a meeting and, you know, getting their feedback directly and just, you know, giving it to me directly. So I'm happy to do that.
Thanks, Farah. Thank you. Milan?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that part of the reasons why we sent out the poll was to know which organizations we each of us know, and then hopefully spread the work of informing organizations so that they can then in turn inform the member of the communities they serve. And so the idea in that is to create this bond, this community knowledge of what we do, how we serve them, and all that. And so yeah, if you could respond, and then I'll make a list and we can divvy up the work for the next, maybe not for June 21st, but for the next community meeting that we have around the ordinance, so that more people can be at least aware of it and aware of us, because what has come out to me is that nobody's, the people, especially in the Latinx community, don't know about who we are. And so, yeah, I appreciate if you could answer this poll. I'll send an email with a link to everybody again so that you have it easily available. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Milan. Beans. So next up for us then, I'm going to hand it over to Flo for the interim independent police monitor report.
Hi, can the host allow me to share the screen, please? Here on behalf of the OIR group tonight, which is serving as the interim independent police monitor for Boulder, I'm here with Mike Giannacco and Teresa Magula, and Teresa is going to present one of the cases that was closed since the last meeting. Okay. So in May, the panel completed 3 full case file reviews. One of those is still pending, it's pending disposition, and we'll report on that probably next month. There are 10 cases still pending panel review that the panel prior to May had voted to conduct a case review of, and those cases are ready. 5 of those are scheduled, and 5 are pending completion of the department's investigation. And I want to report on, we're going to report on 2 cases that the panel reviewed and that have been closed. And in the first case, this was a serious misconduct case, and involved an officer in the rank of a sergeant who was accused of sexual harassment and engaging in unreported relationships with two officers. In this case specifically, this sergeant was also a police training sergeant, and he sexually harassed Officer 2 by making 2 comments to her on different dates of a sexual nature, specifically suggesting that the officer tell others that the sergeant was good in bed because of rumors they were involved, and making a reference to her not having had sex. The second female officer, they had a sexual relationship that he did not report, and with another third female officer, he had a sexual relationship that he did not report. And this particular officer was receiving on-the-job training as part of the police training officer program. This sergeant, Officer 1, resigned on October 28th, 2022, prior to the interview, prior to his compelled interview. The panel recommended for all allegations that the allegations be sustained, that the officer would have been fired, but for the fact that he hadn't resigned, and recommended that the department never rehire this officer. The department agreed with those dispositions, and the panel also made a number of policy recommendations to the department and the city. First, the panel recommended that the department retrain its employees on issues involving sex, dating, gender, sex, gender identity, and sex gender preferences in a way that is consistent with Boulder's values, policies, and current workplace best practices. Department responded that this is a valid point, and the department is looking at its required training calendar for the remainder of the year, and it's going to see how best to integrate such training in its in-service training. The second recommendation the panel made was that the department should establish a fully anonymous tip line for officers to report their concerns, their negative encounters, or any issues with the way their gender, sex, or private relationships are discussed in the workplace. The department responded that it is looking into this, and also looking into what existing systems are in place throughout the city and in human resources. And if there are ways to make anonymous complaints, it will ensure that they are shared internally with employees, as they may not be well known. The third recommendation the panel made was that there is a specific form related to one of the general orders, training and career development, training conduct. It's called the Training Conduct Acknowledgement Form, and it's part of General Order 138 called Training and Career Development. And the panel recommended that this form should permit trainees with whom a trainer or a police training officer attempts to establish a personal relationship, to notify training or the PTO leadership anonymously. The department said that that it's in the process of trying to get accredited by the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement, known as CALIA, and the department's plan is to review and revise all of its policies, and it's going to evaluate the current PTO policy to see if it can integrate this recommendation, assuming it meets CALIA standards. And finally, the panel recommended to the city that it update its nepotism policy, which the city last revised on August 31st, 2009, and clarify its definition of supervise, i.e. rank and or direct chain of command, who is an employee affected, and clarify whether subordinate employees are required to make notifications regarding a supervisor-subordinate relationship. The city's equity officer advised that the city attorney's office is examining the nepotism policy. And I want to say one other thing about this case, because this has come up in a number of, this is the third case that I think I've presented that involved an officer resigning prior to the conclusion of the recommendation. And it's been mentioned that, is it possible that an employee can be forced to remain an employee so that the employee can be fired as opposed to resign or retired. And legally, you cannot do that. An employee is entitled to resign or retire. I should advise the panel and the public that in these situations, the department is required and did so in this case, advise the Colorado Peace Officer Standards and Training Office. It's a statewide office for the state. It's known as the Post. And it tracks all certified officers or peace officers in the state of Colorado. And it advised the Post that this officer resigned while under investigation, so that should the department in Colorado or elsewhere want to know about this officer, it can find out from the Post and that the officer resigned while under investigation. And any potential employer could seek information from the Boulder Police Department. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Teresa Magula.
Thank you, Flo. Can you forward one more slide, please, Flo?
Oh, sorry. I forgot to forward the slide myself.
No problem. All right, so this is a case. First, I'm Teresa Magula. I have not met some of the newer panelists. I am a colleague of Mike and Flo's with OIR Group. Very happy to be part of this panel meeting tonight, so thanks for having me. The case that I will be presenting is a misconduct case, which is different from what Flo just presented, which was classified as serious misconduct, two different levels of classification. In this one, the officers received a call for a stolen vehicle. They contacted the reporting party, the individual who reported that his vehicle had been stolen, who was tracking his vehicle via GPS in a live track system. The officers observed what they believed to be the vehicle and followed what they believed to be that stolen vehicle. After consulting with a supervisor, those officers determined that they should initiate what is called a high-risk felony stop. This is when officers use a strategic set of maneuvers to pull over a vehicle that they believe to be stolen. This involves the officers, at least two vehicles, in this case, three, providing a kind of strategic cover for officers. It involves the drawing of firearms and calling the driver and any passengers of the vehicle out of the vehicle, both for officer and public safety. The officers in this case drew their firearms. They commanded that the driver of the vehicle exit her vehicle, which she did. She then was commanded to walk back toward the officers. In doing so, the officers realized that they had stopped the wrong vehicle based on the demeanor and the compliant behavior of the individual driver. Moments later, after that, yet another error was made, unfortunately, in which the officers matched the vehicle identification number of the stolen vehicle to the vehicle that they had stopped. That was done again in error. And the officer, when he was informed of this fact, one officer grabbed the complainant by her shoulders to prevent her from reaching into her vehicle, which she was doing to attempt to get access to her purse in the vehicle. There were five employees involved in this. There were 4 officers who were directly involved in this stop itself. And there was a 5th officer who was the supervisor that the officers had consulted with early on. In this case, the allegations in this complaint were related to the fact that a high-risk felony stop had been directed, and secondly, that the officers had used unnecessary force in pointing their firearms at this particular complainant who was directed out of her vehicle. There was also one particular allegation of an excessive use of force from the complainant related to the officer who grabbed her shoulders. And in the course of the investigation, it was learned that the supervisor who subsequently responded to the scene did not have nor activate a body-worn camera. And that was an allegation that the department initiated as a result of the investigation. So here it becomes a little bit muddy, and you'll see that we have 3 columns instead of 2, like the case that Flo just presented to you. In this case, the panel recommendations differed from the recommendations that we as the independent police monitor felt were appropriate for this case. And the panel recommended that the officers who were involved in the high-risk felony stop have those allegations sustained. The 2 officers in this case were police training officers, and the other 2 were trainee officers, so they were being trained. The panel determined that those 2 trainee officers should not be held should not have those allegations sustained because of their particular role they were learning at this point, and perhaps did not have as much information as their PTOs in this case. We recommended that the officers be exonerated in this particular case, with the exception of the supervisor who did not have his body-worn camera. And we recommended that that particular allegation related to the body-worn camera be sustained. The basis for our particular recommendation and the definition of exonerated is that the incident as described did occur. So we're not disputing that this did occur and that there were errors made during the course of this particular high-risk vehicle stop, but that those were the actions of the officers in initiating the high-risk vehicle stop in the way that they did, and in executing it in the way that they did, was within the department's policies and procedures. There were a number of recommendations made, and the panel, I'll go through those first. The panel recommended that all the involved officers receive training in the detection and identification of stolen vehicles, and that the training team, the department's internal training team, conduct a tactical review of the incident to identify all missteps. We, as the independent police monitor, also agreed with that recommendation, and the department agreed with the recommendation as well. The second recommendation by the panel was that BPD should review its use of consumer GPS data as evidence. We did not make a recommendation regarding the use of consumer GPS data as the independent police monitor, and the department responded that with respect to the recommendation regarding use of GPS data, the BPD will ensure that it is adhering to best practices. We also, as the independent police monitor, made a recommendation that BPD should conduct department-wide training regarding the identification of vehicle stops, safe vehicle stops, and communication with the public. So it goes just a step further to request that the department retrain officers regarding the appropriate safety measures, both for the public, the drivers, the passengers, and the officers. In this case, this particular driver was pulled over on the side of a highway in poor weather, and that resulted in obviously some concerns around the safety of both the driver and the officers during that event. We also, the panel also recommended that BPD should revisit its requirements regarding running license plates as a prerequisite to a high-risk vehicle stop. The department responded that with respect to that recommendation, the BPD will ensure that it is following the best practices in that area. We, as an independent police monitor, did not make any recommendations regarding running license plates prior to high-risk vehicle stops. We, as the independent police monitor, advise that the BPD counsel involved officers on communication with community members, including offering an apology where one is warranted. In this particular case, the panel also recommended, as they have in previous cases, that the department work on its customer service, including, again, issuing apologies when those are warranted and improving its communication with the public. We will note also that we recommended that the BPD consider extending a formal apology for the driver for her personal experiences. And we are very pleased to report that the BPD did in fact issue a formal apology to this particular individual. She experienced trauma as a result of her experience, and BPD has acknowledged and apologized for the missteps that were taken in the course of this particular event. So it gets a little muddy and a little confusing. Hopefully you were able to track all of the different pieces moving here. The takeaway from this is that the department has acknowledged that mistakes were made and has extended that formal apology, is providing the appropriate training and counseling regarding high-risk vehicle stops and public communication to its officers. And will continue to look at the effectiveness and utility of the consumer GPS data going forward.
Thank you, Teresa. And just finally, wanted to note the statistics for the month end of May. The interim independent monitor classified 3 new complaints, all of which are non-serious misconduct complaints. The monitor observed 11 interviews and deemed 3 department investigations as thorough and complete. At the end of last month, the open monitor and panel docket cumulatively, some of the cases on this docket are not being reviewed by the panel, stood at 20, including those that are still pending department disposition. And that completes the interim independent monitors report.
Thanks so much, Flo. And I want to hold and thank you to Teresa. Thank you. I thought that was excellently presented. That was a very complex case, and I just really appreciate you. I also want to take a quick moment, panelists, to note, that in accordance with the current ordinance, this is our opportunity if we have anything to say in regards to the judgments on a case. Of course, we are not allowed to share any information beyond what the independent monitor has shared, but this is our opportunity if we have any follow-up on any of those reviews. So just want to open that floor for just a minute if anyone has anything to say. Yeah, Hadassah.
Sorry, I was on that second case. And I think at the end of the day, for me, if the expectation is that what happened to that citizen is normal for anyone living in this area, that can happen to us at any point in time, I think that's crazy and unacceptable. And ultimately, that's why we sustained. And so that was really all I had to say about that. Thank you.
Yeah, Chico, I see the hand. Chico, I think you're still muted. You have a very persistent mute button.
Sorry about that. I forgot that it was the other way around. My only concern, just like Hadassah said, I noticed that BPD has gone round and saying they will adhere to best practice in one of all those. That's how they are responding to those. And my question is, what is best practice? If in the first place it wasn't adhered to, so what are we talking about?
Thanks, Chico. It's funny, I was actually mulling that on we hear best practices a lot in this work. And I think that's the central question. Who sets best practices in this work? Is that a community judgment, or is that a judgment non-inclusive of the community? And I think, you know, in these rare instances where we disagree with the department, it comes to that question, who determines best practices? Yeah. Yeah, Milan, I see the hand.
Thank you, Danielle. I agree with Hadassah and what Chico just said. Also heard that this person suffered trauma, and an apology, while necessary, doesn't repair trauma. I'm also very concerned about that, as Hadassah mentioned, that we are, you know, every one of us is at risk of being traumatized by this kind of behavior. And how do we repair that, and how do we repair the trust in a situation like that? Is very concerning to me that this was not sustained, not knowing much more, but I trust the judgment of Hadassah and all the other panelists there. So yeah, just wanted to raise again, I heard trauma. That's very concerning for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Milan. Victor, I see the hand. Yes.
Yeah, just a question for future case reviews. So we get the disposition from the police side of things before we review the case. If there's an instance where the monitor has their own opinion, can we also get that before we review the case? Or is that's not an established standard? Sometimes we find out before, and when we had Joey, sometimes it's in the process. So I'm just wondering about that.
Yeah, thanks, Victor. Flo?
The process, in this kind of case that the panel reviewed, the final police department disposition is done after the panel's review and recommendation. So the department only makes a final disposition after reviewing the panel's recommendation or in this case, it's rare, but the independent monitor made a separate recommendation. And then the department responds in writing with their final disposition and their response to the policy recommendations. In cases that the panel decides in cases that the panel is not reviewing, the monitor has the opportunity under the statute to provide independent recommendations if warranted, that differ from the chain of command recommendations to the chief. And I turn it over to Teresa because.
Yeah. Victor, thanks for that question. In this particular case, and given the past concerns around a sense that you as the panel were not appropriately informed that the independent police monitor, the independent police monitor at the time was going to present different findings. It was our take as OIR group, and has been for some time, that a collaborative approach is best. I was able to provide my particular findings memo to the 3 panel members who had reviewed the case. I also ensured that they, while were in disagreement perhaps with what my findings or our findings were as the monitor were, that they were well advised of my rationale, of the perspective that we were bringing to the table, in addition to lifting their own concerns in their own memo and having an opportunity to review those. So to me, to OIR group, hopefully to the monitor that comes into this position, I think there is space and opportunity to provide a lot of back and forth and have that collaborative space to be able to become aware of what will be presented to the department prior to that memo being sent.
Thanks, Teresa. And this might actually be an opportunity too. One of the things I wanted to mention today, we've made two procedural adjustments to how we do cases. And the first one, we asked OIR group and BPD to follow up with the reviewing committee for the committee to review follow-up communications with complainants. And so in this case, this was the first time we did it. Teresa provided the review committee the chance to review her follow-up with the complainant, and then Alistair also provided his follow-up as well, so that the panel gets the opportunity to check and review how we're being represented back to complainants. And then the second thing we're working on as well, and Flo has started working on with the police department, is a tracking document of all of our policy recommendations. And so that's to make sure we can follow up on policy recommendations down the road to make sure that nothing falls between the cracks, that we're tracking all those recommendations and requests for more information with the department. So those are two small adjustments. And I want to raise those two in particular is to remember we're only 2 years into this. And so any opportunity to help improve the process, we just have to ask the question, and we can take it to the governance committee to do it in the bylaws. We can make it a request to BPD or to the monitor. This process is ready to be proactively improved as we go. Yeah, Flo.
Yeah, I just want to say two things. And our group has been involved in this for over 8 months, I think. And there's only been 2 instances where in a case that the panel reviewed where the monitor disagreed with something the panel did, to the extent that we felt that we were going to write a separate memo. In both those cases, we shared the perspective with the reviewing panel. Probably, I know I did it at the time after the panel made a disciplinary recommendation. And I have gone back throughout the 2 years of the panel and tracked all its policy recommendations. It's up to date, and I sent it to the professional standards unit within the police department because there were gaps in some cases. There was no response that I could find, even in cases where the 2021 annual report said that there was a policy response. I couldn't find it. So they are working on that, and the police department is aware that the goal of the panel is to publicize its record of policy recommendations and the department's response, which is why we gave them the opportunity to try to fill in the blanks somewhere throughout its, in their responses.
Which in a way, that doc's already working. So thank you, Flo. Panelists, any other final thoughts, comments? I'm also going to suggest that we go ahead and power through to the end without a break and go through public comment, but I'm gonna wait 30 seconds on that. If you would like us to take a break, shoot me an anonymous message. I won't call anybody out, but also wanna make sure if someone does need to take a break, we do it. So I'm watching my messages and hold for a second in case anyone else has any further comment with the independent monitors report. And for public disclosure, just a reminder, based on a vote we took at our last meeting, the panel decided to do a temporary moratorium on new case reviews and any other work on the panel that's not related to updating the ordinance. The panel is continuing to review cases that it had committed to prior to that vote. And tomorrow evening, City Council will be discussing the moratorium. So just raising that up for public disclosure. And thank you to Farah and everyone working on the ordinance, because I know we're all here to review cases in the end and look forward to resuming full activity. Cool beans. In that case, we'll move over to public comment. Give me just a second to pull up my notes. So for members of the public, oh, thanks, Teresa. Oh, Mr. For public comment, every member of the public will be asked if they'd like to comment this evening and unmuted so that you can answer. If you would like to give comment, members of the public, you will get 2 unimpeded minutes to do so. If there's an interruption or loss of connection, we will stop the clock for you and restart once you get back in. I will give you a verbal notice of time at 20 seconds to the end of your time. I'm also going to put a timer up on the shared screen as well. At 2 minutes, we will ask our city staff facilitator to mute your feed. It's nothing personal. We just want to be fair. And so at the end of the 2 minutes, you will be muted. And then panelists, you can offer short responses at the end of a comment. Just go ahead and chat me, or at the end, I'll double check to see if anyone has anything to say. But just want to keep in mind, though, this is primarily the time of the community, and so we don't want to shut out their voices by speaking more than community members. But certainly, when we get questions or queries, we can jump in and answer those as well. Give me half a second. Okay, so we have our timer on the screen. And then Amy, if we could start with Amber Elise Carlson. And Amber, if you could unmute, would you like to give a comment this evening?
Hi, no, I am with the Daily Camera, so I am just listening in this evening, but thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Amber. We really appreciate you being here and covering our work.
Sure thing.
Next up, if we can have Amy Lynn Siegel. Lynn, if you want to unmute, would you like to give comment this
Yeah,
evening?
I like to see the board members, or I'm not going to speak. I like to see who I'm addressing.
Lynn, we have the timer up and your 2 minutes has begun. If you
And
would,
Daniel, I would like to see the other board members. If I cannot, I am not speaking.
Lynn, if you want to adjust the settings on your screen, you can
What
share.
do I do to do that? I have never been in this situation, and I go to 5 Zooms a day.
Thank you, Lynn. You have a minute and 30 seconds to go.
Well, I guess we're going to run down the clock, aren't we, Daniel?
Lynn, you should be able to click on the top right of your screen and there's a view. Should be a-
Nope, that is not correct. Is
Okay.
there anyone else on this meeting that can do that? Please
Nope.
speak up.
Lynn,
Yes,
do you see a timer right now?
I see the timer filling the screen.
Great. So are you on a phone or are you on a laptop?
Oh, I'm on a MacBook Air.
Okay, so I don't know what it looks like on a Mac-top Air. What it looks like on the top of my screen is in the very far right-hand corner.
Yeah, I know. I always see that. You can click on gallery
Yep.
and I cannot. The format is not allowing me to do that. I'm being honest with you.
I believe you. I don't have advice for you on what to do with a Mac.
It says
Lynn,
view
you have-
options, fit to window, 50%, 100%, 100, up to 300%, fill full, exit full screen. That's all it says.
Lynn,
on
you
my-
have, you have 20 seconds, Lynn, if you'd like to give your
Yep,
comment.
like I said, we'll
First
just
here.
run down the time, Daniel, this way. If you can't get your act together so that I can, like every other city board, I can see who I'm addressing. So just, you're just not inviting me to speak. Sorry about that, Daniel, but it's not my problem.
Thanks, Lynn. That's your time. Next up, Amy, let's bring on Martha. Martha, if you want to unmute, would you like to give comment this evening?
Yes, sure. Hi, everybody. I was very excited by the meeting yesterday that took place. It was an intro, but there was a lot of organization and thought put into the timeline and how it's constructed. So I just wanted to give kudos for that. And then for the remainder of my time, I just wanted to share in the heartbreak for the Jordell Richardson family. Aurora PD, killed a child. I know there's some semantics, but since I'm just a citizen sharing the societal grief that accompanies that, I just wanted to be very clear that the time for humanity is before a gun comes out, not just after. This child deserved consequences for his actions, not a coffin. On Friday, the family will be doing a procession that will run through the Capitol. So they are gathering for a demonstration at the Capitol, but we shouldn't be following a hearse in that sort of situation. And I don't want that to continually happen for people. So this work is so important, and when everything's on fire, I just hope that everything can be pulled together so that the real work and meat of this can actually be done. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Martha. And panelists, I'll stop my share. Panelists, any follow-up? Thank you. With that, then, yeah, awesome.
One question, would we be able to share that event on our website just to sort of, promote, or is that?
I'd have to check in with the communication and engagement department. They typically don't post information external to city organized events.
Yep.
I've been having the same struggle with getting all of our advertising for all the Juneteenth events across the county.
Okay.
So, but I can certainly check. I'm happy to ask.
Okay.
Thanks, Amy. And maybe that's Hadassah, that just reminded me, at the beginning of the panel, we had asked the question about a dedicated social media feed for BPOP, for the police oversight panel. And I cannot remember where that went or if we ever followed up on that, but that comment makes me think of that, because I think we specifically thought about Twitter, although I don't know how many of us would like to be on Twitter at the moment, but if there is some other opportunity, maybe communications committee, if that's something to add to y'all's agenda at some point.
I will lift up that no other panel or board in the city has their own social media avenues. So I'm not sure that would be approved. However, I'm not sure if there's another creative solution that the communication and engagement subcommittee wants to come up with. We can certainly ask.
Thanks, Amy. Thank you. Panelists, any other thoughts, comments, concerns? Really hope to see y'all next Wednesday at the library. Otherwise, thank you so much for being here, and see you soon as we get the work going. Have a good night, everyone.